Coogs House. I do consider myself a fairly optimistic person, perhaps to my own detriment. But today we're going to talk about a group that has me feeling some concerns.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way we can listen to Cougs into your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. And welcome back to the YouTube channel. If that's where you found us, it is so good to see you again. I remember we're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers at 1,500, which is our next benchmark. We're just over 1,400. We're going to be giving away a Locked On Cougs hat with the popper on the front, the Locked On Cougs on the side. So make sure you hit subscribe down below and get us there. And comment on the video to help us let us know you're in the contest when we get there. If we talk a lot about linebackers today, and then at the end, we're going to wrap up with some update information on the latest on Reggie Chaney. I'm seeking answers here, so tell me in the comments down below if you can't think of anything else or have nothing else to say. What aspect of the program awards, what would you name after Reggie Chaney, Mr. Houston Cougar basketball? All right. Now, I am looking at a couple different things here. We're going to start with football talk because football season is fast approaching, and sometimes sports is the greatest escapism when you're dealing with things. That said, the first two segments, we'll be talking about linebackers and linebacker play. I have some question marks there. And the third and final segment will be updates as of this moment, as we're recording, of the Reggie Chaney situation. More details coming out, but not a whole lot of details. So anyway, more on that at the end. We do need to issue one correction from Monday's episode, and admittedly this was pointed out to me before yesterday's episode, but with all the events surrounding Reggie Chaney information, and yesterday's episode is all about Reggie Chaney. If that's what you're here for, please go check that out. Anyway, on Monday's episode and talking about newly named starting quarterback Donovan Smith, I think, and speaking too fast because I do that sometimes, I attributed some quotes from him on Friday before he'd officially been publicly named the starter to the Fan Fest on Saturday, where he was publicly named the starter. I had the date, I think, flip-flopped, or maybe anyway. That said, I think that the glowing remarks he had to say about his offensive line, the competition, and this, I think it only speaks louder that was said before being named the starter, but I digress. I said that the linebacker group, as we move into that, has me pessimistic because it's the largest unknown to me on the roster. And I say to say that I don't even necessarily know who starts. So in the first segment, I want to talk about one guy and maybe even two that I think ought to be the starters, full stop. Disagree with me if you want. And then kind of talk through the rest of the group because I don't know who fits where and I don't know what the best fit is right now. We should point out that Houston runs a 4-2-5 defense, which you have 4 down linemen, 2 in the box linebackers, and then 5 defensive backs. Now, in those 5 defensive backs, one of them will feel more like a free safety. 2 of them will feel more like down safeties or strong safeties, maybe even small linebackers. And then 2 of them will be cornerbacks. Sometimes one of your down safeties is more of a coverage guy, one of them is more of a boundary guy. That's typically what Houston has done schematically. So as I talk through this, remember that in true form, to a 4-2-5, only 2 of these guys will start. Houston has notoriously been a program that rotates through linebackers, and they are in a position that takes a lot of contact, so it's not bad to have a lot of them, but it does feel like a fairly important position without a whole lot of guys on the field playing it, and there are question marks. The one question mark I don't think I have is that Hassan Hippolyte will start at one of the 2 interior linebackers. He is moving from boundary safety to linebacker. I don't think that they'd be moving a team captain from his position he's played for 2 seasons to come down to close to the line of scrimmage without the intent that he would play a lot. I think that's a signal to us from them that we should take openly. Now, as a safety, he did have some work to do in coverage. That's why he was playing the boundary side strong safety, less room to cover on the boundary side with the hashes and things like that. Um, but he was great at attacking downhill and tracking down run plays and those kinds of things. Moving him into the box, into like the tackle box there, may provide more opportunities to make plays. We know he's a very aggressive tackler. And so I think that that could really play to his strength and skill set. In the spring, when they made this move, first of all, I should point out that at Big 12 Media Day, Hassan Hippolyte said he asked the staff about the move, and it was actually him that brought it up, it sounded like, as the way he said it. Last January, like after the season was over, he's like, we got some great DBs behind me. I feel more comfortable closer if I continue to work on my body. Can I move down? Those kinds of things. Holgerson said in spring ball that Deontay Anderson had done the same kind of move for the Cougs in the past under his tutelage, under Holgerson's time there. Hassan is a sure tackler. He loves tackling. He's a solo tackling artist. And reports indicate that it looks like he's gained good linebacker weight. That means he's like gaining muscle mass and not getting fat or anything like that as he wants to move into the box to take some of those big hits. You're dealing with a lot more offensive line blocks inside the box than you would outside of it. I will say the one thing that makes me confident about Hassan in this role is that he is a long-term team captain and that he would do what's best for the team. And frankly, as selfless a guy as he has presented to be his entire time, one of those things would be if he were not the best guy to play this position or to start, he would understand, he would sit himself, right? The same way he thought it was best for the team for him to move into the linebacking spot. I feel fairly confident that if it were suddenly not the best interest of the team for him to be on the field playing this, you're like, hey, you know what? I should just go play special teams. I can lead with my voice and with my intellect and let someone else make plays. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there's pro talent in some form or fashion inside of Hassan. Guys that are that good at tackling typically find some way to at least make a special teams roster somewhere in the NFL, right? Something will happen from that perspective. But I do think that moving a linebacker will be interesting to see how he adjusts to those new positions. You think of aggressive guys like him as being great linebackers because of how aggressive they are, but sometimes the condensed space as you're in like smaller windows, it's a question mark. And I'm not saying I don't think he'll rise to the occasion. I'm saying that as an ever optimist, I haven't seen it. I need to see it, right? The other surefire starter, and that might make this segment go a second or two long, I think should be Malik Robinson. Now, I'm going to talk in this segment why I think he should be, and then the next segment why he might not be. But Malik Robinson is as veterans get on the Houston Cougar football team. He was initially a signee at North Carolina in 2017. You heard that correct. He signed with North Carolina in 2017 at a high school. He was a top 25 inside linebacker in the class of 2017. He played there for 2 years, then went to a junior college in 2019, then went from junior college to Houston in 2020. Obviously got to not count that season. He played in 12 games of the 2021 season, just one start, but did rotate in and played in a lot of the special team snaps. And then he got injured 2 games into 2022, tore a pec, so obviously he missed the whole season after that. And that's his injury redshirt that he gets to come back and play this season. He had 15 tackles in those 2 games he did play in the first 2 games of last season. And Dave Campbell's ranks him as a top 10 linebacker in the state of Texas going into the 2023 season. I think that it's safe to say if he were healthy last season, he probably wouldn't have the opportunity to come back and play this season, but he also might be playing on Sundays. So I'm not sure where that balance falls. He had a great first 2 games last season, understands the defense, is a veteran, understands a lot of defenses, and has been here for a minute. So I imagine if he's healthy, he and Hassan Hippolyte are the 2 starters. Malik does have 1 or 2 things I want to pay attention to, though. And the second segment, talk about ways that he might fall out of that lineup or things that he might be the first to rotate out in that group and who could come and take that other spot. But first, we do have to talk about the fact that I have a hat with a pink bird on it because I went to Bird Dogs, and you should too. Now, Bird Dogs has pants and shorts that make you look good and feel great. I wear them I said teacher and coach to open the episode. When I teach at the front of my classroom, I'm wearing Bird Dogs. To go to the gym, I can wear my Bird Dogs. As I sit here and podcast, I wear my Bird Dogs. when I go on a date, it's been a minute, but when I go on a date with my wife, I wear my bird dogs. Bird dogs are something you can wear anywhere and everywhere. They fit slimmer through the thigh and legs, but give you a little bit of a sculpted look, but still have this stretchy material to fit comfortably at all times. Make sure to go get your bird dogs today. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code lockedoncollege for a free white hat like the one I've got on here on the YouTube channel. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or promo code lockedoncollege for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. All right. Now, I said in the second segment, I want to talk a little bit about how Malik could fall out of that. And frankly, I think the deal with Malik Robinson potentially falling out of that starting spot, as veteran as he is, would be twofold. One, that pectoral injury is connected to the shoulder. If those can be a real hard thing for linebackers to come back from. And I don't mean to say that it can't happen. I think Clay Matthews did at the NFL level once upon a time, right? But theoretically, there's a lot of things you lean with in contact, connecting all of that tissue there together. And, I'm not saying a year later he's not 100% healthy, but it does change things as a linebacker. It's like, the old 1980s and running backs and their knees and ACLs and those kinds of things. It's not quite that severe, but it's not good. The other thing I'll say too is that, he was a starter for the 2 games in 2022 and set to play a lot more than that, I guess, after had he been healthy. But in 2021, he did show some issues in the speed of the game, right? The game felt a little fast for him coming from JUCO. 2020 played some in the COVID year, but we both know that year was chaos and everyone that was healthy got to play at some point. So that 2021 thing may indicate like moving into a new league. Well, as Houston's going to move into the Big 12, what does that look like for Malik Robinson? You know, with age does come wisdom, but also takes a lot of hits as a linebacker and special teams guy. So what does all that add up to play? If he's the healthy Malik Robinson who's on the first 2 games last season, I think he's a starter. There are just a lot of question marks in my head as we sit here in August, with the first game being September 2nd, that I don't yet have answered. We haven't seen game film on these guys in a long time. If it's not Malik Robinson at the second linebacker, or if Malik Robinson is more of a rotator, or if Hassan Hippolyte is more of a rotator, or if they all rotate, who comes in off the bench? I think the first guy off the bench is Tremarcus Cheeks. He played in 13 games last year and played a lot of defensive snaps after Malik Robinson got hurt. He was a Samford transfer before that. He played at Houston last year, but was at Samford before that. And he did play a lot of special teams before he ended up getting the call to more of the starting line. I think he started in 5 games I have down. In 2019, when he got to Samford, though, he was a second-team freshman All-American per Phil Steele. I think worth pointing out there is that there is some nose for the football type of talent here that is very important for a linebacker, especially in a 4-2-5, where there's 2 linebackers in the box, have a lot of free reign to go find the football in the open gaps. I think the thing that'll be interesting to watch with Tremarcus is, as a kid that continues to grow and develop, is he developing into a Big 12 size and speed linebacker? I think he's on the right trajectory. I just would like to see it play out. And it's a guy we don't know a heck of a lot about because he did make those 5 starts last year after other injuries. But suffice to say that, he wasn't necessarily in the game plans at the start of the season last year. And so what does that look like in year 4, I guess, for him technically with some time off there? So again, some good talent, just haven't seen it play out yet. For what it's worth, and I don't think it's fair to pin this on any one position group or one guy, but the 5 games he started at Houston last season, Houston did not have great defensive performances. Again, that is not just on Tremarcus Cheeks by any measure, but he was on the field for those kinds of things. So, take that as you may. I think he should get a shot. I'm not saying that. Again, it's a question mark. A lot of these things are just question marks, and why I don't understand or don't know a lot about this linebacker position group. Jamal Morris is the returning leading tackler for this group, so you have to think he'll fit in somewhere. He did start off. He signed with Oklahoma out of high school and mostly just played special teams there. came in last year, came into Houston the year before last year, was a 4-star safety out of high school. So he made the move that Hassan Hippolyte is making now. Jamal Morris made that years ago. So same kind of conceptual thing. I think the thing that is interesting that a lot like Hip to me, a lot like Hassan Hippolyte, I should say to me, is that Jamal is a good tackler, good solo tackler. And so the two of them are so good at tackling in space because tackling in space is something that a tackler that has good want to, like those two guys at safety, is really good at. It's the other stuff, the coverage stuff at safety, that they might have more issues with. So moving into the box, I think that if they get put in space, they're going to make the tackle and make the one-on-one tackle. It's some of the other stuff, the tracking the ball through the offensive lineman, condensed spaces, fast reaction times, those kinds of things. We'll see. We'll see what Jamal Morris led the linebacker room in tackles as the returning leading tackler, I should say. Donovan Mooten led the group of tackles last year. But he's now, I think, with the Colts, if memory serves me correctly. So obviously, we'll see what Jamal does this season. Aubrey Smith, I think, is a name to keep an eye on. Colorado transfer. I know Colorado was not very good last year. I know Colorado completely cleaned house and all of that because they weren't very good last year, yada, yada, yada. What I will say about Aubrey is he is Big 12 linebacker sized, Big 12 linebacker speed. He played mostly on special teams last year at Colorado, but was a young football player. And in the course of defensive play, did register a sack. So it's not like he was never on the field or anything like that at Colorado. He did not play a lot of defensive snaps there. There's some good film. You can go back and watch their spring game. He's been on the field in the Colorado spring game, so you can actually go find some tape on him. Again, he moves like a Big 12 linebacker in a lot of ways. He's just on the younger side, and so because of the violence of that position, sometimes you, much like an offensive lineman, kind of have to like grow into it, kind of develop into it, and we'll see how quickly he has to do that or how much time he gets to do that. In a similar vein, the last name I'd like to keep an eye on in this group that I think you could see on the field this fall is LaTrevion McCutcheon. He is a highly touted Austin-based freshman this season. Class 2023 had a lot of Power 5 offers. His brother transferred in from USC as defensive back. Latrell McCutcheon is his brother. Latrell played at USC for Lincoln Riley and got there after spending time at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. Very athletic family, obviously. They went to Austin LBJ High School. LaTrevion played just 6 games his senior year of high school and was still a top 130 ranked kid in the state of Texas consensus across all recruiting boards. That's impressive. We both know how tremendous high school football is in the state of Texas, and to not even have that much senior game tape and still be ranked that high says a lot. Obviously in high school, because every one of these guys in high school be very good. He had things like ball hawk and play disruptor and turnover. All those kinds of things would attribute to him. I think in the bunch, LaTrevion may have the best future in football. He is also a true freshman this year. And so just like we said with Aubrey Smith, just like we're saying with a lot of these guys, linebacker is a position that's really hard to transfer and play right as a freshman, as a true freshman to come in and play right away. But if I were picking a true freshman to do it, it would be him. And also, I'm confident that he'll be an all Big 12 linebacker someday in his future. I'm really high on this kid, if you can't tell. It's just how fast does that future hit? And so we will see. For the 2023 Cougars, that's a problem. For the big picture Houston Cougars, that's not a problem at all, right? But for the 2023 Cougars, who fits where is a problem. So again, I think I have an idea who the starters are. I have question marks about how much they play, who rotates in, and maybe it's a linebacker by committee, and they just all get fairly evenly distributed snaps, or a group of them does, and that way everyone's fresh all the time, and there's not a whole lot of market difference or whatever. That's not the worst way to go about it, as long as there is some voice, and I maintain Hassan Hippolyte's leadership is that voice for this football team, and so it's a good sign. I should mention guys that are also in the linebacking room, because then if frankly, they proved me wrong and get on the field a lot more. I'm not totally off. Chris Pearson's a freshman from Alabama. Again, he's a true freshman, so I just see him being a later developing prospect, but we'll see. Aaron Willis is a soft transfer from originally Tennessee. As a transfer in, I think that, it's worth asking, like, I don't think he was high on their depth chart. I don't know how fast he'll rise on ours. Also a young as a true sophomore. Kempsey Arinzi is true freshman from Dallas. I bet he redshirts. And Blake Okoye is a sophomore from Klein Collins. Again, I just think he's still got some development left to go. Again, those are all young guys. Not saying anything wrong with them. I just think that it's a position that's really hard to play as a young football player. So we'll see. We'll see the linebackers go. We'll see how they do as we move into a more solemn subject in the third segment. I mentioned at the top of the show that I wanted to wrap the show with an update on Reggie Chaney and that situation. Now, obviously, on Tuesday's full show, we talked about Reggie and the tragic loss that was. Spent some time remembering that then, and then a lot of emotion and stuff in that. Reggie Chaney is Houston Cougar basketball, and his untimely passing at just 23 years of age is kind of hard to wrap our collective heads around. And just difficult thing to do. On Tuesday, we did get updates from Joseph Duarte of Houston Chronicle. Duarte has been on the story from the start. And say what you want about newspapers and those kinds of things. Duarte is a great reporter covering the University of Houston and is very involved in this story. Per Duarte, and if you want to read it more in depth, again, you can go to HoustonChronicle.com and read it. Reggie Chaney was found dead in his Arlington apartment. The tenant, which is also listed as a family friend, found him unresponsive and called 911. The paramedics declared him dead on the scene Monday afternoon. Investigations ongoing. The initial investigation did not indicate any sort of foul play. And while that's somewhat of a good sign, I guess, again, I said in yesterday's episode, I don't know that there's any answer to how this happened that would make any of us feel good about it, right? There's no answer to how it happened that would make it not suck a lot. But it does not appear to be foul play. That does mean that it could take several weeks to officially determine what caused it. So as difficult as that might be to be patient on that, I think that's what we have to do is be patient, be there for his family and loved ones, and let the information roll out when it does. I don't think anyone's going to stop wondering about Reggie Chaney, so I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But I think that's where we're at on this. He was, I think this part's particularly painful, scheduled to fly to Europe for his professional basketball debut on Monday the 28th. He's playing for a club in Greece. And I think that, that being so close to now, feels extra crappy. He was extra close. He was very, very close to making it to that childhood dream so many kids have as they come through the program of going to play professionally after college. Kelvin Sampson posted a statement through the Houston Cougar basketball social media sphere. And I'll just read it, but you can find it wherever Houston Cougars basketball is posting on social media. Sampson said, first in his family to graduate from college, reached his dream of signing a professional basketball contract. He was leaving Monday, August 28th for Greece. A son, a grandson, a brother, the ultimate teammate, the identity of our Cougar basketball culture, a winner. Thank you, God, for allowing Reggie to come into our lives. Rest easy, Reg. Your legacy will live on forever. I love you, and I will miss you dearly. Kelvin Sampson. Again, Sampson is not a man of a ton of words, although he does have his different metaphors and things like that, I guess. So I think it's worth pointing out that everyone is feeling this very, very strongly. I was surprised that Sampson put out a statement myself, not that he didn't have to put something out, obviously. But I know that this one hurts a guy like Kelvin a lot. Kelvin had so many glowing things to say about Reggie in his time at University of Houston that I can't imagine the kind of pain Kelvin's going through, let alone the close family and loved ones of Reggie's. That family has set up a GoFundMe to help with the sudden influx of expenses, surrounding these kinds of things. No one ever expects that to fork over this kind of out-of-pocket money very quickly to cover all of this. And so they set up a GoFundMe to help pay for it. I put the link in yesterday's show notes. I'll put it in today's show notes. It's, again, I think Houston Cougar Basketball's Twitter and X and Blue Skies and Facebooks and all those things I posted as well. But if you're looking for a way to help or a way to tell Reggie you're thinking about him or whatever, I think a lot of people are using that GoFundMe and helping support the family to do that. I've seen people do $3.20 because, not everyone has the money to scrap together for this, but he was number 32. I've seen people do $32. I saw one generous person do $320. Anything helps as they're gathering money for these funds. So make sure you visit that GoFundMe if you can and send something to the family to help with this very unexpected, sudden need of cash. To help take care of these kinds of things, right? Cougar basketball family is very, very real, and this is how you support one another, right? As I mentioned at the top of the show, in the comments down below, I typically ask for silly things, and I have no influx or say or whatever. I'm a dude with microphone that enjoys talking about the Cougs, but I will say I think it's interesting to think about like honoring Reggie with some sort of a thing, whether that's something at the Fertitta Center or some sort of a Houston Cougar type something because of his impact on the culture shift in this program as a starter on a Final Four team and as a key member, a sixth man of the year on one of the best teams to ever come through campus this year. I think there's something to be said about his impact on the culture, and I think there's something to be done to honor that in a little bit longer lasting way. I don't know what the answer to that is. If you've got an idea, let's share them. Talk about them down below in the comments. Or, as always, find me at Painsworth512, PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all of your social media handles, the Blue Skies, the Post News, all those things. I'm on all of them. Painsworth 512, PAINSWORTH 512. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. I'm going to recommend Locked On Big 12 for your second listen as we get ready for Big 12 football season and what hopes to be a little bit more uplifting than some of that for sure. We're going to try and continue to use sports as the fun escape that it is sometimes from real life and get focused on fun things here for a moment until more news obviously pops up, and we'll be able to tell you more of that as it comes. Thank you again for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Locked On Cougs, the primary Locked On podcast network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.